Welcome to A Goose Homestead.
Hi, I'm Mallory and I'm going to show you my compost at home. I use Simple Passive Pile Composting with a very simple structure. This is our newest compost pile and I started it with basically just a bunch of leaves out of the driveway, and we started adding kitchen compost, and it's composting way faster than my other compost piles. It still looks awful and definitely needs turned. Then we started like a garden waste and rotten hay compost next to it. Let's see, that's comfrey on top there from the library. I don't actually have comfrey growing here yet. I need to though. It's like the plant of permaculturalists. This is our active compost bin right now. As you can see, the structure is made with pallets. These pallets aren't even nailed together or anything. I just used some tie wire to hold them together, just to hold the pile kind of more in a pile shape rather than spreading it out across the ground. I don't use a base on my compost piles. One, it's easier to turn without something at the bottom. It's also cheaper, less material, and it actually helps with drainage if I overwater the compost pile. So inside this compost pile, I like to add a little bit of everything. I try to add a couple scoopfuls of whatever manure I have around. I have chickens, so I use a lot of chicken manure. Cow or horse manure is readily available to me. I go light on the horse manure for sure. And any waste from the kitchen, anything the chickens don't eat. I have eggshells, squash shells, avocado, things like that, coffee grounds. Anything the chickens don't eat goes into my compost pile. And then I layer it with carbon matter, and I happen to use rotten hay just because I have a lot of that around my property. Old moldy hay. It also helps as a bulking agent to help with aeration and water movement and let the worms have some space to move around. I do on occasion use grass clippings. I mostly use the grass clippings, either leave them on the lawn or use them as mulch in the vegetable garden. And we do turn it at least a couple times a week, especially if it's stinky. Usually that means I have too much nitrogen matter, too much kitchen scraps, things like that. I'll get to that in the problems section. But my husband does turn it about twice a week. We have currently 3, 4, if you count the manure pile, 4 compost piles. It seems to work for our little homestead.
Start turning the compost. Turn about once to twice a week. Got like 3 of them. They're pretty easy to make. Just a bunch of pallets put up, and then just gotta come in and mix it up. Chicken manure in this one, and fruit and apples and
What's your favorite part about composting?
it's pretty fun. Get a little exercise every morning or every other couple days. And it's nice to see it turn into dirt. You have a full apple and then keep at it, and they're all gone and just pieces of dirt and soil now.
So now this compost pile is mostly chicken manure. Last winter it was just garden waste and kitchen scraps. And I didn't keep it watered enough, and I didn't turn it enough, and the entire pile froze, which freezes the composting process. The microbiology cannot live through such cold temperatures and the worms and such, and it was literally frozen solid. This winter I'm going to try putting black plastic over top of all of the compost piles in hopes of keeping in heat and moisture. Cats are not compostable. Neither is pet waste. She likes the compost though. Here is my secondary composting area. Here I have a pile manure. It needs piled up again. It got spread out when we were using it in the garden this year. And then we have 2 compost bins right next to that. In the first compost bin is mostly chicken manure. That's something I would use for like a midsummer fertilization, and it's getting pretty close to being not hot anymore. And this is just like the other one, mostly kitchen scraps, garden waste, and rotten hay. It tends to work pretty well. Problems I've had with my compost piles is that the straw or hay doesn't actually always decompose all the way. So when I'm sifting it, it's harder to sift because of the clumpiness of the hay. Doesn't always decompose all the way. I've also actually had this pile that is currently manure, mostly chicken manure and bedding, froze over winter last winter. Completely froze solid. It was not hot enough. It didn't get enough water. This winter I am going to be trying to put black plastic over top of my compost piles in hopes that they will continue composting over winter. It'll help retain moisture and hopefully a little bit of heat when the sun hits it. And in last season, I think part of the reason that that compost pile froze was that I had way too much nitrogen matter in it. Just too many apples. I have been borrowing an apple press, and people would come last fall to press their apples, and I don't think I had enough brown matter to put in. I didn't add enough brown matter to all of the pressed apple waste. And so it actually stunk really bad for a little while, and then it froze solid over the winter. So this year I will try that black plastic and see if it works. I also have a small compost sifter that we made this year, and I've had to repair it like 10 times. 6 times, 1.2, I have no idea. But the compost sifter, it works. It's just Compost Sifter 1.0. And this is our compost sifter. You'll see that in action. And it's Compost Sifter 1.0. It's not a very good design. So maybe by next year we'll have a better design on our compost sifter. But for now it's getting the job done. It's actually more like Compost Sifter 1.2 because I've changed it so much and repaired it, so it keeps breaking. It needs to be lighter too. It's really heavy. Yeah. It works all right, huh? Yeah, I've repaired it about 6 times. Keeps breaking.
Thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe
and keep up to date on what we're doing here at the homestead. Peace.